Chapter 34, April 12, 2201, Moonbase Executive Hotel. Cooper woke up early the next morning. He didn't sleep well with his mind focused on the explosion and also the fact that he was supposed to leave today. He got up and took a long hot shower. Here in the hotel, there were no restrictions on the water, which was nice. Even in basic, he never took more than a 5-minute shower, as there was always someone else waiting, and they usually were yelling at him if he took too long. He got out of the shower, dried off, and got dressed in a comfortable outfit. He would put on his dress uniform later when it was time to go. His flight was scheduled for 1700 hours, so there was plenty of time left in the day. He had no idea if it would be delayed due to the explosion or not. He still had so much to ask Ryder. What was this terrorism he was talking about? And what was the EOA? He looked at Ryder's bed, but it was clear that he never came back last night. He decided that he could wait until he saw Ryder. For now, he wanted to look over his orders in detail. He pulled out his military-issue tablet. As a private first class, he was issued his own device. He opened it up and clicked on his orders. His name was listed along with his military ID number. It read, Pursuant to Orders 01-378-99, Private First Class Cooper Richardson is hereby ordered to report to UGMSSC Gemini L2 Space Station for advanced training to be an astromechanical engineer, MOS 492. Richardson should report to Moonbase Terminal G at 1700 hours on 12 April 2201 to meet the transport to the space station. He swiped the screen to see a short article and a photo of his graduation ceremony that was published on the newsfeed. Despite the anticipation of leaving for training, he looked at the photo and realized how much he missed his friends, Adeline and Childs. Another wave of loneliness came over him when he finally thought about Ryder. Even though he was finally getting to know his grandpa, he knew he wouldn't be seeing him anymore either. When they posted everyone's orders for advanced training the day before graduation, Cooper was surprised to see that no one else was bound for Gemini. He hoped he would at least have a chance to visit Childs since he was hovering just 40,000 miles over the moon. Cooper did a little research on the Gemini space station. He knew that it was located at the L2 Lagrange point, one of the 5 points around the Earth and Moon orbits that provided a stable place for a space station to be located. The Gemini space station was a busy place, almost as busy as the moon base. It was strategically located so many ships came there to refuel or pick up supplies before heading out to the outer planets or asteroids. He wanted to ask Ryder for more information. Just as he was thinking about it, the door opened and Ryder entered the room. Ryder looked tired, having worked all night on the interrogations. Cooper started to ask how it went, but Ryder stopped him and with a raised hand and said, First, let me shower and get some coffee. Then I will bring you up to speed, as I am sure you have a million questions. Cooper nodded, and Ryder went into the bathroom. When Ryder came out of the bathroom about 20 minutes later, he was looking haggard, but refreshed. Cooper brewed him some coffee and handed him a cup. Thank you, Cooper. I need this after the evening I had, Ryder said as he took a sip from the mug and sat down at the table. To start, let me just say that I'm sorry that our evening at Craters was cut short. I had no idea that was going to happen, but luckily we were far enough away from the blast not to be hurt. I questioned 20 people throughout the night without much success. Sergeant White and I did find some interesting video footage that confirms one of the temporary workers slipped onto the ship sometime yesterday afternoon. That was probably when the blasting cap was connected to the C4 charge and prepared for detonation. The ship that we tracked headed toward Earth and was probably his escape route. It looks like he detonated the C4 remotely when he had just reached open space. They tracked the ship on its course to Earth, which appears to have landed outside of New Atlanta, which, of course, is where I will be headed with a small team later this evening, Ryder concluded. So was everyone killed in the attack? Cooper asked. Luckily, the duty shifts were in transition at the moment, but there were 2 security personnel who were killed and 3 more are in the infirmary, Ryder responded. I guess it could have been worse, Cooper said, thinking of when they first arrived and how busy it was. Yes, that is true. However, this will definitely be a setback for the Mayflower program. I saw a report from the maintenance crew, and it said the supply ship will take a minimum of 4 months to be repaired. Wow, that can't be good for the program, Cooper commented. Agreed. They only have a fleet of 5 supply ships right now, so losing one of them will delay the launch date. This gives the EOA another win for now, Ryder said with a frown, looking out through the window to the spaceport as he took another sip of coffee. You mentioned that acronym before when we were examining the ship. I wanted to ask about it then. What is the EOA? Cooper asked. Ryder took a long drink of his coffee before responding. EOA stands for Earth Only Agents. It is a radical Christian group that believes God created the Earth and this solar system, but we are never to venture from it. They believe that humans wanting to leave the Earth is an insult to God and everything He created for us. They are fighting with any means necessary to keep us from making the interstellar journeys. Churches have always held a lot of power on Earth. They lost some influence when the world was in chaos and people from all religions and cultures were forced to come together in the underground cities. However, they weren't shut down, and as the push to space became stronger, they found more of a following. At first, they were against all humans living in space, but when that was impossible to stop, they adjusted their beliefs to a sort of solar system only mission. But the EOA name stuck. They are a terrorist group, plain and simple. However, they seem to be backed by political figures all the way up to the Space Congress. I have been fighting their group for years. Again, I feel like I was sheltered my whole life, Cooper said, shaking his head in frustration. This is the first I'm learning of any of this. It wasn't part of our schooling, and there was nothing about it on the terminal back in New Denver. Yes, well, it's a terrorist group, but the government doesn't want to strike fear in the population, so they don't talk about it much. In fact, they will probably blame the explosion on a malfunction. The EOA is probably not as hidden as you might imagine. Back in New Denver, did you ever see people show a symbol of hands cupped in a shape of a circle like this? Ryder said this while holding his left hand out in the shape of a letter C and then wrapping his other hand around it to form a circle. As Ryder did this, Cooper had a flashback to New Denver. He was at one of the community meetings and the governor was on stage talking about the taxes. She announced that they were once again reducing the credits because the government needed more funding for space exploration. It was then that a small group of citizens in the back of the room got to their feet and raised their hands in the symbol. It was a silent protest, but the effect on the governor was immediate, and she motioned to the security guards to head to the group. The governor continued with her speech, but Cooper watched as the security guards confronted the group and quietly got them all seated. One person who seemed to be leading the group was escorted away. Cooper meant to ask his dad about it afterwards, but that evening Cooper was busy preparing to take his final science test, causing him to forget about the event until now. I can see by your expression, that you have seen someone use this symbol before, Ryder indicated. Yes, it was at a community meeting. A group stood with this symbol in protest against added taxes being sent for the space exploration, Cooper nodded. Ryder mused. That was probably just a minor subset of the group, but yes, they find ways to protest in most of the cities. Some groups are larger and have more influence than others. It was why I am headed back to New Atlanta. It appears we may have found the active cell that is doing the most damage, although I don't think this is something we can stop permanently. With any religious terrorist group, there are always others who can be recruited to the cause, but we need to shut this cell so that we can get the Mayflower back on track. Once the regular trips of passengers begin to Sperrier, it will be more difficult for the EOA to stop the movement of humans to other worlds. So is the port back open? Will I still be leaving today? Cooper asked. Yes. While the port is not back to full operation, all military vehicles are operating again, which means you and I will be leaving around the same time. Okay, I'm ready, but I'm going to miss you, Grandpa, Cooper said, looking up for support. This was one of the reasons I lost touch with my family so many years ago. My career makes it difficult to maintain family relationships. I am constantly on the go from one side of the solar system to the other. There are so many challenges around the world, and many times it seems I am the only one who is called on to fix them. However, they always make sure to give me another medal for my troubles, as you could have seen from my uniform yesterday. Ryder said this without sounding egotistical. He knew the part he played for the military, and he always performed it with incredible courage and usually great success. Losing Mitch in the mission from the New Denver was one of the few times he didn't complete his mission successfully. The mission to New Atlanta was dangerous, but Ryder didn't share this fact with Cooper. The military usually took more time to carefully outline its missions. However, there wasn't enough time for pre-planning on this one. They needed to hit the EOA hard and quickly before the group did any more damage to the Mayflower and further delay missions. This meant that they couldn't be clandestine in their approach. They were coming in hot, with a small group of soldiers ready for a battle. This was a battle that the EOA was inevitably prepared for, and the terrorist would see him coming, which left him in a precarious situation. Ryder, though, still had a few cards left to play when he got to New Atlanta. Looking at Cooper, Ryder thought, I might be getting too old for this. Cooper was asking him something, and Ryder woke up from his thoughts. What was that, Cooper? Ryder asked. Forgive me, I'm tired from a long night. No worries, Grandpa, Cooper said, and he realized that he was starting to get more comfortable calling him that. I was just wondering how you were feeling and if there was something else we could do today with the time left. Ryder nodded and had a thought, but first, he would need a little bit of rest. I do have something in mind. How about if I grab a couple of hours sleep, then we go on an adventure? Sure, said Cooper. I have an idea for you now. We haven't talked about your advanced training much, but I have some files about the Gemini that might interest you, Ryder said. I've been there several times. As he was talking, he was assessing his military tablet and flipping through pages. That would be great. I don't know much about it, but the sergeant said it was the best place for me to get the training that I needed for the Mayflower. He was correct. With the amount of space traffic that goes through that place every day, you will have your hands full learning and repairing different ships. It should give you the skills you need to be innovative en route to Sperrier. Ryder turned and showed Cooper a list of links on the screen that covered many different topics. I called up some of my personal files as well as some other data already publicly accessible about Gemini. Why don't you spend the next few hours pursuing the information? Then, when I get up from my nap, we can go on a little adventure, Ryder said as he got up and moved slowly toward the bedroom for some rest. Cooper interlocked his fingers, pushed them out in front of him, and cracked his knuckles before clicking on the first link. The first link was all about the history of the L2 Lagrange point. In basic training, they spent a few days learning about space as a whole, and the article talked about this point and all 5 Lagrange points. They were critical places for use as stopping points for space travel. This one, L2, was especially helpful because it was outside of the Earth and Moon's orbital influences. If you think of the solar system as a thin tapestry stretched horizontally, when you put each of the planets and the sun on the surface as balls, they create wells sinking into the tapestry. Ships flying along the surface would be drawn into the wells, which is good when you're trying to get to the planet, as you don't have to use as much of your energy to speed towards it. But coming up out of the wells requires enough fuel to escape the gravitational pull. The L2 point was on the outside edge of the Sun, Earth, and Moon wells. It was a relatively stable point in space where ships coming from further out in the solar system, like the asteroid belt, could stop, refuel, repair, and resupply for the next journey without having to come all the way into the gravity wells. As more and more companies pursued space as a way to profit, the Gemini spaceport was established. Gemini was almost as busy as the Armstrong port. Cooper opened the next link, which talked about the military structure of the port. The Gemini port was a joint military project, so the civilian involvement as well. Commander Bolton ran the base. He was described as a tough but fair leader who was good at keeping the peace between the military and civilian elements. He was described as a tough but fair leader who was good at keeping the peace between all the military and civilian elements. It looked like Cooper would probably be working in the repair division, run by a man named First Sergeant Bolts. Cooper chuckled before continuing. Was this for real? His name was Bolts, and he ran the repair division? Maybe it was just a nickname or something. There wasn't much on the system about Bolts, so Cooper made a mental note to ask Ryder if he knew him. The next link was about the threats to the spaceport. As Cooper read, he wondered if he should be reading this. It seemed like it might be meant for security-level personnel. It broke down the threat levels for each group that might attack the spaceport. One of the groups caught his attention, the EOA. It said that the threat level was now at level 4, having just moved up from level 3. He clicked on the link, and to his surprise, he saw the pictures of the supply ship from yesterday. As he read, it offered a detailed report about how the bomb was made, how it was detonated, and possible scenarios about the chain of events leading to the attack. One key point that wasn't listed was the fact that the escape ship was seen heading to New Atlanta. As he continued through the report, he noticed this wasn't the first ship time a ship was attacked. It appeared that a supply ship was sabotaged while at Gemini as well as 2 years ago. In that attack, 3 of the terrorists were killed. The pictures looked different than the attack last night, and the report stated that the EOA used some sort of liquid bomb to dismantle the fuel systems. Cooper clicked back out and looked at some of the other threats. There was a group listed known as the Blackbeards. When Cooper clicked on it, the group was identified as space pirates, who took their name from the famed Blackbeard pirate of the 1700s. The Blackbeard used a fleet of ships to attack supply ships traveling en route to Gemini from the Earth, Moon, and even the outer planets. There were many reports listed of ships that barely made it back to Gemini, running on almost no power and supplies, having been attacked by the Blackbeards. While the Blackbeards never attacked Gemini directly, the threat was there, albeit a small one. Just as he was finishing the article on the Blackbeards, the door opened and Ryder strolled out, looking much more refreshed. Cooper looked up at the clock, surprised that more than 2 hours passed since he sat down at the tablet to read. "You look surprised to see me up, Cooper," Ryder said. "I am. I can't believe how much time slipped away from me. The articles you gave me to read were just so interesting," Cooper said. "I thought you might enjoy learning more about the place you will call home for the next few months," Ryder said while brewing up another cup of coffee for himself. "Yes, it was, but it did bring to mind many more questions." "I thought it might, but first let's go on an adventure. Does that sound good?" Ryder said, finishing up the cup of coffee. "Sure, I don't mind. I don't have much packing to do. What did you have in mind?" Cooper said, getting up from his seat and stretching a little. "Well, up at the top level of this building there is an observation deck. We can get an early dinner there, but more importantly, they have these pods where you can use telescopes to take a look at different features in space. It's all computer controlled, so it's pretty easy to use," Ryder said. "Great," Cooper said as he followed Ryder, who was already heading toward the door. They walked together down to the hotel elevator and then took it to the top. When they reached the top level, Ryder led the way through a few passageways and approached a set of double doors etched with the words "Observation Level." "Another perk of our hotel room is free access to the observatory," Ryder said as he used his hotel key on the pad, turning the light green as the double doors opened up automatically to the observatory. Ryder went through first, and Cooper followed slowly. As Cooper passed through the doors, he looked up and was shocked by the vastness of the place. His feet echoed on the tiled floor as he walked in. Above them was a huge domed glass area which was next to the spaceport. Looking out, he could see the gray expanse of the moon, but what shone most in the sky was Earth in all its glory. He could only see half the Earth, but it seemed brighter than he'd ever seen it before, even brighter than when he was standing in the West Rim crater on his final mission. It was rising slowly above the moon's horizon. Ryder beckoned him forward toward one of the pods. There were 6 pods on one side of the observatory. 2 of them were already occupied, but Ryder picked the closest one that was free. After they climbed in, the pod closed and turned dark, except for a small terminal. Ryder used his hotel card again to activate it. Then Ryder typed in a short request, and the whole pod illuminated as if they were in space. Cooper gripped the side of the black couch they were sitting on for fear of falling. "Oh, Cooper, I'm sorry. I should have warned you about the effect. You see, the designers of this pod figured out a way to give you the feeling of floating in space. We are connected to a telescope that is outside the observatory, and we can tell it where to direct its gaze. Currently, I have set it up to give us a better look at Earth, and as you can see, it is implementing the order now," Ryder said, looking up. As Ryder said this, the blackness all around them simulated the movement in space. Straight ahead was Earth, and it appeared closer than it was in the observatory. It was as if they were floating suspended just above the Earth. The effect was exhilarating to Cooper after he recovered from his initial shock. As he watched, he noticed more details of the Earth. There were lots of clouds, and as if he had to guess, they were over North America. "Is that the United States?" Cooper asked. "Yes," Ryder said, "you are correct. We are lucky that the Earth is turned this way right now. Would you like to see if we can get a closer look at New Denver?" "You can do that?" "Yes, the telescope can be zoomed in closer. Let me make the adjustments," Ryder said as he typed something else on the terminal. The pod appeared to drop in, as if floating down to the Earth at a slow pace. "Some people like the exhilaration of falling and will set the zoom feature to go much faster, but I prefer the slow pace so that we can see the details as we approach." Slowly, the pod's image grew, and the Earth now surrounded them. As it moved in closer, the details of Colorado started to appear. He could see the Rocky Mountain chain. There was still some snow on the mountains, but he also saw some green appearing from the trees and the spring growth. Then, as they grew closer, he could see the city coming into view. Skyscrapers appeared, some with their roofs caved in, but others were still intact. He could see the trees and the vines in green patterns running down many of the streets. Then finally, he saw the familiar parking garage. Ryder pointed the telescope directly at the garage where Cooper first found a way topside. Suddenly there were tears in Cooper's eyes, and he couldn't stop it. He was sobbing, sobbing for the friends he left behind in New Denver, sobbing for his mom he had never known, sobbing for his father who died out there in the street while Cooper sat by his side, and sobbing for the happiness of being here with his grandpa now. Ryder put his arm around Cooper and pulled him close. I am so sorry, Cooper. I wasn't sure if it was too soon to see this, but I want to tell you that after we left, we sent in a team to clear out the rest of the raiders. They also found your father's body and buried him near the Capitol building with the tombstone to honor him. I want you to know that the city of New Denver is much safer now because the military significantly increased security. If you were still there, your freelancing days would be over, though, as no one is allowed out from the underground. Thank you for showing me this, Cooper said, while sniffing and rubbing his eyes with one hand. He was doing better now. He was only 15, but he felt like he had lived through a lifetime of change in just the past few months. It was sad to hear that freelancing was over for the city, though, and Cooper wondered what Glenn was doing now that he couldn't go topside. Now, shall I show you something a bit happier? Ryder said, trying to lighten the mood. Yes, I am ready to give my final goodbye to New Denver and move on, Cooper said, lifting his head, wiping his eyes one more time and clearing his throat. Okay, Ryder said, tapping on the terminal once more. We have to switch to a different telescope because the Gemini is on the other side of the moon from us, but here is where you are headed tonight. With that, Ryder clicked the last button and the image around them dimmed and was replaced by space again. Cooper looked back, but all he could see was the sun and the earth in the distance. There was a black orb blocking some of the stars, but because of their location, they could only see the dark side of the moon. He looked forward to seeing Gemini. It was beautiful, and Cooper gasped for a moment when he saw it. The Gemini consisted of two big rings slowly spinning around the central axis. As the telescope zoomed in more, Cooper saw the spaceport area at the bottom of the axis, and there was a small ship connected to a long tube. This is Gemini, and right there you can see a ship that just returned from the outer planets. Clicking on the terminal again provided Ryder with some more information. This is the Shenzhou 51 spacecraft. The Chinese have a long history of designing spacecraft with this name, all the way back to the Shenzhou 1, which was an unnamed test flight back in 1999. This current ship spent the past few months in the asteroid belt outside of Mars. It can drill into asteroids and mine for gold, if you can believe it. Your job at Gemini will probably involve working with spacecraft of all kinds, including the Shenzhou. You will learn the inner workings of these ships, as well as spending lots of time in a spacesuit helping them with repairs on the outside. You see, your position is a military one, but the military is often hired by civilian companies to help them with repairs, since we are the best in the world at keeping ships going. Grandpa, I can't wait, Cooper said, with true excitement in his voice. I am happy to hear that, Cooper. It does seem like the perfect place for you to go based on the qualities you inherited from your mom. Now, do you have any questions for me after spending time on the terminal reading the documents? Ryder asked, taking his fingers off the keys of the terminal and leaning back on the couch. Oh, man, I have a million questions, Cooper said, lighting up at the thought of learning more about his future training location. I would love to hear more about your experiences on Gemini and your trips there. Well, I can tell you this. Sometimes you truly will feel alone out there. It is far from Earth and even the moon. However, there are always new people and new ships coming in from all over the solar system, which can make for an interesting experience. The first time I was sent there was to deal with a fuel supply problem. I was a young lieutenant at the time, but even so, I had a knack for figuring out what was going on when things weren't always obvious. They sent me to work in the missions area. My job was handling dispatch of some of the spaceships, as well as ensuring that there were always room for ships coming in from the moon and the Earth. At the time, travel to the outer planets was brand new, so there wasn't a lot of travel there yet. Well, within a few weeks, I was able to get to know the current commander pretty well, and we used to have dinners together once a week in his private dining room. With a few months' work, I pretty much determined the source of the fuel supply problem. All the evidence pointed to the commander siphoning off fuel and other supplies to a private company that was planning an excursion into the asteroid belt to search for gold and other precious metals. The commander planned to help them get completely ready, then he would quit unexpectedly and take over as the commander of the private fleet. Having mostly outfitted the fleet with all the fuel and supplies they needed, he believed he was all set. I put the final pieces together before our weekly dinner, and I hoped during the meal he would admit it, which would make it easier for the prosecutors. I secretly contacted the admiral back on the moon, and he sent a team of military police ready to pounce when I said the word. We enjoyed a quiet dinner, which I recorded, of course, and I turned the subject to the asteroid belt. Can you believe it? He offered me a job on his new fleet. He was so cocky and figured he was above the law. But what he didn't realize was all that the fuel and supplies he siphoned off were hurting the growth and future of the whole military. Just as he took his last bite of dessert, I signaled the team to enter and arrest him. He is now serving a life sentence for treason in the moon-based mining work camps. When he was arrested, he was planning on leaving only 2 days later. I earned one of my first gold stars for that success. Wow, I don't know how you do it. It sounds like you are always in the right place at the right time, Cooper said with admiration. Well, I'm not successful all the time, but the military has this fantasy that I can solve any problem. Grandpa, did you ever meet First Sergeant Bolts? I think he might be my trainer when I'm on Gemini, Cooper asked. Old Sergeant Bolts, of course. That guy is quite a character, Ryder said, laughing out loud. I am sure you must have thought it was a joke when you first discovered his name. To put your question to rest, no, that isn't his real name, but I'm not at liberty to tell you that either. For the past 20 years, he has gone by Bolts, and I will let him keep his secret. Bolts is a good guy, one of the best. It was his secret message to the military that tipped us off to the suspicious behavior of the commander I just told you about. I trust him completely, and you should too. He will be an excellent teacher for you. He will help you to learn all about the fuel, electrical, and guidance systems for nearly every spaceship that is out there now. He will work he will work you though, so prepare for some long hours in the spacesuit as well as trips deep in the inner workings of the ships. I will give you one hint. The old man loves chocolate chip cookies. So some night, if you're feeling a little lonely, bring him cookies and listen to his stories. If he gives you any hassle, make sure he knows you're Ryder's grandson. That guy owes me a few favors as well, Ryder chuckled, shaking his head from side to side. Will the training be like basic again? Cooper asked with a little worry on his face. Oh, heck no. You aren't in an infantry unit. You will still be expected to dress in uniform, keep your room clean, and there will usually be some daily PT. But after that, the focus will be on teaching you the job. Bolts will already know that you are destined for the Mayflower, so he will be helping you to learn everything you can to survive that mission. The challenging thing about the Mayflower and your advanced training is that you will only have limited replacement parts, so you'll have to improvise a lot. There will be ships coming in from the outer planets that haven't been back to port in years. You might have some new parts available, but for the most part, you will be fixing the parts that exist on the ship already. That's good to know. I was wondering, one of the articles you left me seemed to be a threat assessment. It seemed pretty detailed, and I was surprised by how much information was in it, Cooper said. I was wondering if you'd ask me about that article, Cooper. Every minute I sit with you, you impress me more. To think you are only 15 now, and already you are looking at the big picture. I put that article on there for your eyes only, and it is a part of the threat assessment we write for each port and for every asset we have in the universe. Since you are my grandson, I felt like I could trust you with this information, so you would know what you were getting into when you go to training. Gemini is a relatively safe port. However, there are threats from many different directions, as you saw yesterday in the moon port. That was what I wanted to ask you about, the EOA. When I read the notes about the attack yesterday, it didn't say anything about New Atlanta or who placed the detonator. Ryder contemplated a little before responding. I probably shouldn't tell you all this, but there are parts of the military that are compromised. The report you saw was the one that was shared with the World Space Conference. Because of that, it doesn't have all the facts. If we include what we know about New Atlanta and that we are planning an assault, it might be seen by someone who thinks favorably of the EOA and warns them ahead of the assault. So what you saw was the diluted report, the one that gives enough information to Congress so they feel we've done our jobs, but not enough for them to know our future plans. After the attack is over, we will update the report for everyone, but for now, we must keep things confidential and not put them down in writing. This is why I haven't left already. My team has to pull a lot of strings to acquire soldiers and a cruiser we can use to get to Earth. If we went through the proper channels to take it would take too long and too many people would know the plan. The assault will be a dark one. Only 2 people know the exact mission we are going on, the pilot and me. The soldiers will be informed of our mission once we are en route to Earth. For now, they think it is just another training mission. Cooper looked intensely at Ryder for a moment. He was definitely worried about this mission. Cooper couldn't imagine losing his grandfather now that he had found him. He knew there was no other option for Ryder, so he responded by saying, "Thank you for trusting me with this information." Ryder could see the worry in Cooper's face, so he reached over and grabbed him by the shoulder and looked him in the eyes. "Cooper, I am sorry that I must go, but this is what I do. Don't worry, I have been through much worse and faced much harder tasks than this before. Good thing about this mission is that I won't be alone. I have a team of trained soldiers at my command. Frankly, I don't know if we will even find anything. Many times the EOA clear out long before we have a chance to catch them. They would rather flee so they can fight another day. I promise to return to you. This mission will be over in just a few weeks, and I will try my best to visit you at Gemini." Laughing a little to lighten the mood, Ryder said, "There is a restaurant on Gemini that is even more exclusive than Crater's. When I finish this mission, I will take you to dinner there, I promise." Ryder could see that he alleviated Cooper's concerns, but he lied a little about how dangerous the mission was. Ryder found it tough to be in this position. For so many years he worked alone and didn't worry about anyone or alleviating anyone's fears. Now, because of Cooper, he needed to think about someone besides himself. Risking his life also meant risking that Cooper would lose the only member left of his family. Cooper seemed to be relieved by Ryder's words, so he shifted the conversation. "So I was reading about the EOA attack at Gemini. It sounded like 3 terrorists died?" Ryder nodded. "Yes, that was a couple of years ago. They used acid to destroy the fuel tanks of one of the supply ships destined for the Mayflower. The attack was successful at sabotaging the supply ship, but their escape attempt was thwarted by none other than Bolts himself. He discovered the plot in time to contact our team, but he was unable to stop the attack. He trapped the 3 men in one of the outer airlocks. He was going to hold them there until we arrived, but instead, the 3 men chose to hit the emergency airlock release, and they were sucked into space, committing suicide. A quick death for them, but a loss of information for us about their group." "Wow, that is crazy," Cooper said, grimacing a little at the thought of being sucked into space like that. "I have one other question," Cooper said, changing the subject. "I was reading a little bit about Blackbeards. I remember yesterday when we were headed to the museum, you mentioned space pirates. Is this the group you were referring to?" Ryder nodded. "I see you caught my hint yesterday. Yes, that is exactly the group I was referring to. Now, there are other space pirate groups, but the Blackbeards are by far the most organized and largest group. They have attacked countless ships. Recently, they moved out further into space, closer to the asteroid belt. I think this is because the military was onto them. Last year, they planned to attack the Egg. Remember the place where we stayed before heading to the moon? The military was alerted to the attack, and they were able to stop it. While the military destroyed one of their ships, most of Blackbeard's fleet escaped. From that point on, they moved further outside of the Earth's reach. There are so few ships out there in the asteroid belt, and it is so vast that there isn't anyone to call for help. However, in between the Earth and the moon, there are military patrols who can provide more assistance now." They both heard Cooper's stomach grumble, so Ryder stopped talking and suggested dinner. Cooper readily agreed, and they left the pod behind and headed into another part of the observation deck, where there was a small cafe with open seating looking out onto the moon plains and the Earth still rising higher in the sky. After a good meal, Cooper and Ryder continued to talk more about Gemini and the space pirates. However, Cooper's mind drifted more, and his anticipation grew as it got close to his departure time. While he was excited about the adventure coming soon, he was struggling with leaving his grandpa behind. There was something about Major Ryder that made Cooper feel safe no matter where he was. When they were together, Cooper felt like it was home. After dinner, they left the cafe and took a few more minutes to walk around the deck and examine some of the placards with information about the history of the place. Then they headed back to the hotel room. When they arrived, Cooper noticed there was a bag of items sitting on the counter. Cooper looked to Ryder, questioning, and he said, "We didn't have time to go shopping, but I thought you might need some supplies for your new journey." As Cooper opened the bag, Ryder continued, "Inside, there are a few power bars and water bottles, as well as some military stuff like boot wax, towels, and things. There are also several bags of special chocolate chip cookies from the Lunar City Bakery. These are Bolt's favorite brand." Cooper hugged Ryder and thanked him for everything. They headed to the bedrooms to pack their gear separately. Cooper took all of the gifts Ryder gave him and packed them carefully. His trip wouldn't even be a whole day, as Gemini was only about 40,000 miles away, about 1/6 the distance he traveled to get to the moon from the Earth. Ryder, of course, was headed in the opposite direction, into Earth's gravitational well and into harm's way. Cooper consoled himself with the fact that Ryder promised to return, but there was still fear in his heart. After packing and dressing in his uniform once more, Cooper carried his bag out to the dining room, where he sat with Ryder and looked out the window one more time. Ryder wasn't dressed in his uniform anymore. He was in a gray suit, which made him look more like a businessman than a soldier. Ryder explained that the mission was covert and he didn't want to be seen by too many. Ryder reached into his pocket and pulled out a small credit card-shaped object and handed it to Cooper. "I was never able to give you a graduation present, but I will give it to you now. This is a credits disc. I put 10,000 credits in an account for you. Now, you aren't rich or anything, but this will give you some spending money while you're on Gemini. You will be getting paid by the military while you're in training as a private first-class rank, but this money will help you if you want to buy something special." He reached into his pocket again and brought out a small device that looked like a second credits card. "This one looks like a credits disc, but it is very different. If you put your thumb on the B for the bank name, it will open a small text window which will require a password. The password is Sarah, in honor of my daughter and your mom. After the password is accepted, you will be able to send a short text message to me. This is for emergencies only. It will send a direct message to me wherever I am in the universe. I can't say that I can help you directly, but I will send you help if needed in case one of those threats we discussed comes to pass at Gemini. You can always reach me through the email address you already have for non-emergencies. Look to Bolts for support and help, but if things go bad, use this card." "Thank you, Grandpa. It has been great getting to know you." "Yes, this has been a special time that I will cherish," Ryder said, getting up, "but now I'm afraid it is time to go." Cooper got up as well, and they both grabbed their luggage. Cooper checked his military tablet to make sure it was on the orders page, as he would need this to board the transport to Gemini. They went out the door and headed down the terminal. As they arrived at the terminal, Cooper was surprised to see that things seemed so normal now. He looked out the window and the supply ship that was attacked was gone. Ryder leaned in and whispered, "They moved it just a few hours after we examined the damage. It doesn't help to maintain confidence with the wrecked ship sitting out there for all civilians to see. It was moved into a facility to start the repairs." They arrived at Cooper's gate, and he showed his tablet to the military specialist behind the counter. The specialist indicated that the ship was ready to go and he should proceed through the double doors. Cooper thanked him and then turned to Ryder. Dropping his bags, he gave Ryder one more hug. "I love you, Grandpa. Thanks for everything." Ryder returned the hug and said, "I love you too, Cooper. You have made Sarah, Mitch, and me so proud. You are off to do great things. Don't be afraid. Just use the time to learn as much as you can. I will be following your progress." "Thank you, Grandpa. Please be safe on your mission." And with that, Cooper released the hug, looked up at Ryder one more time, nodded, turned, and went through the double doors to the ship. Ryder waved to him as he left, waited a moment, and then his face turned serious. The time had come to get even with the EOA. This group was growing in strength, and it was time for them to feel Ryder's wrath. He showed his ID to the specialist, who looked up in shock, saluted, and then pointed Ryder to another door behind the desk. Ryder used his ID to open the door and observed his small transport waiting for him. The pilot took off his sunglasses and opened the door for Ryder. Ryder climbed in, and the transport immediately lifted up and prepared for liftoff. Within a few moments, it was up and moving. As Ryder's transport pulled away from the moon and headed to rendezvous with the military attack cruiser, he couldn't help but think of his daughter Sarah. She was so beautiful and was such an excellent astronaut. He then thought about Cooper and how much he was like Sarah. He would make an excellent astromechanical engineer, but most importantly, he was destined to be a leader of many people. As he looked out the window, he wondered if he would ever be able to tell Cooper the truth about how his mother died. He owed it to Mitch to let him know the truth, but time ran out with the hit by the Raiders. Would he have a chance to tell Cooper? And would the truth make a difference for him, or would it just hurt his future? Ryder didn't know the answer. For now, he didn't have time to contemplate his dilemma. He needed to concentrate on the mission at hand, the destruction of the EOA cell outside of New Atlanta. He hoped that he would survive this one, as he desperately wanted to see his grandson again. The end. I want to thank you for listening to the book. I want to thank my family for all their support throughout this process, especially Barb Terry and Susie Travis, who spent countless hours editing and giving me constructive feedback. I also want to thank Kathleen Wharton for taking the pictures of the Denver Central Library I used in the book. Finally, a big thank you to my close friend Evan Schultz for designing a beautiful cover and bringing Cooper to life. I'm dedicating this book to all the people who fight every day to protect our home planet Earth. The scenario I created in this book is one guess at what might happen in our future. I think someday we will reach other stars, but for now this is a fantasy, and Earth is the only world we know, so we must care for it with everything we do. Please go to Amazon.com to find all my other books and book 2 and 3 of the trilogy series Cooper's Destiny.